Deep beneath the surface, in a place where sunlight has never touched, lies a morgue frozen in time. The air is heavy, the silence deafening, and every step feels like a descent into the unknown. This is no ordinary morgue. It's a place where time doesn't move forward, and those who dare to enter are said to never return the same. What I discovered inside is something I wish I could forget. The air inside was thick and oppressive, almost as if walls themselves were breathing. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the sound of my own footsteps echoing like a heartbeat in an endless void. The faint, bitter scent of formaldehyde clung to the darkness, a constant reminder of the place's twisted history. Locals have always warned me about this morgue. They say it's cursed, that its doors have been sealed for decades to trap something terrifying inside. But tonight, I've made up my mind. I'm going in. Whatever they've been hiding, I'll uncover it. As I moved closer to the steel door, something caught my eye. Deep, frantic claw marks were etched into the metal on the inside. Whoever, or whatever, was locked in here, they tried to escape. The morgue was abandoned after a series of bizarre and horrifying events. Staff members started disappearing without a trace, and the bodies in the morgue began to decompose in ways that defied nature. Some said they saw ghostly figures drifting through the halls, their forms flickering in and out of sight. The whispers grew louder, as rumors spread that the morgue was once used for something far darker. It was said that a secret group of doctors used the morgue to perform strange and forbidden rituals, believing they could trap souls inside the very walls. These practices, they claimed, could preserve life or even control death. One former worker, who had been there before it was sealed shut, spoke of eerie experiences. He claimed to have heard voices crying out from the cold, lifeless chambers. But when he rushed to open the doors, he found the rooms empty. No bodies, no people, just the overwhelming silence. And then there's the logbook. A final entry was discovered outside the morgue, hastily written, almost as if the author was running out of time. It read, "Do not open the sealed room. Time is broken here." The steel door creaked and groaned as I pushed it open, its movement slow and reluctant, as if the room itself didn't want to be disturbed. As I stepped inside, the air grew colder, far colder than it should have been. My breath hung in the air, visible in the dim glow of my flashlight. The room before me was lined with rows of metallic slabs, each one covered in a thick layer of dust, untouched for years. It felt like time itself had paused in here, suspended in a frozen moment. The silence was almost unbearable. My flashlight flickered intermittently, as if it were struggling to pierce the thick darkness that seemed to creep from every corner. Each time it dimmed, the shadows around me deepened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching from the edges of the room. As I moved deeper into the room, something caught my eye, a rusted clock hanging crookedly on the wall. Its hands were frozen at exactly 3:33, the time seeming locked in place, as if even the hours had given up trying to move forward in this forsaken place. Nearby, on a dust-covered desk, I noticed a journal, its pages yellowed with age. The entries were disturbing, detailing bizarre experiments that had taken place within these very walls. The doctors, it seemed, had been trying to stop time itself, using the morgue as their testing ground. The journal spoke of rituals, of attempts to freeze death, and of an unnerving belief that the morgue's sealed room was key to their success. Suddenly, I heard it, faint but unmistakable, the sound of slow, deliberate breathing coming from somewhere in the darkness. My heart skipped a beat. I spun around, but the room was empty. I dismissed it as my mind playing tricks, but then the shadows in the corner of my vision moved. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a figure dart across the room. The temperature plummeted instantly, and I could feel a chill crawl down my spine as the air around me grew unnaturally cold. Something was here. Something watching me. The deeper I ventured into the morgue, the more I felt it. Eyes upon me, though there was no one else in sight. Every step echoed unnervingly loud, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It was as if the very walls were closing in around me, pressing in with an unseen weight. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, I heard it, a faint metallic scrape, like nails dragging across steel. It came from the sealed chamber at the back of the room, the one that had been locked for decades. The sound was unmistakable, a slow, deliberate scrape that sent a jolt of fear through my entire body. My heart raced as I turned toward the chamber, the air thickening around me. Whatever was behind that door, whatever had been trapped inside all these years, it was stirring again. I moved toward one of the cold chambers, my breath shallow as my eyes scanned the room. The frosted glass of one of the slabs caught my attention. As I stepped closer, my pulse quickened. There, on the inside of the glass, were fingerprints. Small, smudged marks, as if someone had been desperately trying to break free. The prints were faint, but unmistakable, and they seemed too fresh for something that had been abandoned for so long. My mind raced as I stared at the marks, the chilling thought creeping in. Had someone, or something, been locked inside all this time? And if so, what had happened to them? The air felt heavier now, almost suffocating, as the questions multiplied in my mind. Whoever, or whatever, left these prints was still trapped in this place, and I feared they weren't the only ones. With trembling hands, I reached for the sealed door, the one that had been locked for decades. The air was thick with an oppressive silence as I carefully twisted the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a room frozen in time. Inside, an ancient operating table stood at the center, surrounded by dusty, rusted tools, all stained with dried blood. The smell of decay was overpowering, mixing with the stale air as I stepped closer. And then I saw it, a body, perfectly preserved, lying on the table. Its eyes were wide open, frozen in a look of terror, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. My stomach churned at the sight. How could this body still be intact after all these years? It was as if the morgue itself had preserved it, trapping the soul within. Suddenly, I heard it, the unmistakable ticking of the clock on the wall. I spun around, my heart racing. The clock, which had been frozen at 3:33, was now ticking backward. Each second felt like an eternity, each tick echoing in the room. As the clock moved further back, the whispers started, soft at first, then growing louder, until they filled the room. "You shouldn't have come here," they whispered, over and over, their voices coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air grew colder, and a cold sweat dripped down my back. I was no longer alone in this place. Someone was watching me, and it was telling me to leave. But it was too late. The secrets of the morgue had already begun to reveal themselves, and I knew I was trapped. As the whispers intensified, a cold realization washed over me. This wasn't just an abandoned morgue. It was a place where something far darker had occurred. I began to piece it together. The tools, the bloodstains, the preserved body, all of it pointed to a twisted experiment that had succeeded beyond anyone's understanding. The doctors here weren't just trying to stop time. They had trapped it. The bodies, now frozen in that room, were not just dead. They were prisoners of time, caught in an endless loop, reliving their final moments over and over. The terror they felt, the pain of their last breaths, it was all being replayed, locked in a cycle with no escape. And now, as the door had been opened, so too had the curse that had held them captive. I backed away from the operating table, my legs shaking. The room felt smaller now, closing in on me. I could almost hear the souls of the trapped victims, their voices whispering, begging for release. They had been trapped in this hellish cycle for decades, But now, with the door open, their suffering was free to spill into the world. The curse wasn't just contained within these walls anymore. It had been unleashed. I had come seeking answers, but what I had found was a nightmare that had no end. The moment that door was opened, I had become part of that loop, forever connected to the horrors that had occurred here. Just as I thought I had begun to understand the true horror of this place, something unimaginable happened. The body on the table, perfectly preserved and lifeless, suddenly moved. It wasn't a twitch or a small shift. No, its eyes locked onto mine, wide open, filled with a terror that matched my own. I couldn't breathe. My body refused to move, frozen in place as its hand slowly reached out towards me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. The room was spinning, the whispers growing louder, their urgency piercing through my thoughts. The body's fingers twitched, reaching further and further, as if it had been waiting for this moment. And then, just as I thought I might break free from the trance, I heard it, a deafening slam. The door behind me slammed shut with a force that shook the entire room, trapping me inside. Panic surged through me as the room grew colder, the whispers now a full chorus of torment. The body's hand was inches from mine, its grip tightening. My heart raced, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't tear myself away. I was caught in a cycle that would never end. The door was locked, but the true horror wasn't the physical barrier. It was the realization that I, too, was now trapped in this nightmare, bound to relive these moments for eternity, just like the souls that came before me. The cycle had begun anew, and now there was no escape. As I stand here, trapped in the same nightmare that I uncovered, I can't help but think back to the warning of the locals. They were right. Time truly stops inside this morgue. But now, I fear I've brought something out with me. Something far worse than I could have ever imagined. The whispers, the chilling presence, it's all following me. I can feel it lurking in the darkness, just beyond my reach, waiting for the moment to claim me once again. What happened to the souls trapped inside? Were they just victims of twisted experiments? Or is there something darker at play? And why was the room sealed in the first place? These questions swirl around me, unanswered, lingering like a thick fog. Some mysteries, some horrors, should stay buried forever. But now, the curse is out, and I fear no one will be safe. If you think you dare to explore this cursed morgue, comment below with your thoughts. But be warned, the truth is darker than you can imagine. And if you want to hear more chilling stories like this, make sure to subscribe. The darkness is always waiting for the next soul to uncover its secrets.